welcome or welcome back to my channel. As you may have guessed, today's Tuesday tips video is about gardening. So I showed you guys a couple little clips there of my garden. I'm sitting in front of the window where said garden is. That's why you guys are getting a little bit of a different background here. I would have actually taken this outside, which was kind of my original plan, but it's way too windy and I'm afraid you guys wouldn't be able to hear me. So as you guys probably saw from those clips, I am not a master gardener. Why am I giving you tips on gardening if I am not a master? Because we all start somewhere. And because even though I am a beginner, I have already learned a handful of things. And so I feel that I have something to offer if you are interested in starting a garden in any shape, form, capacity, whatever you're thinking about growing. I have a few tips that I have learned along the way that I would like to share with you. So yes, I am a beginner. So this is like beginner to beginner here, okay? There are a ton of videos you can find here on YouTube and Instagram and all the other places that will give you all kinds of valuable information. I use it a lot for research, specifically YouTube. But this is just like a beginner's guide on how to get started. That's what we'll call it. Now, I have tried to kind of number these in order, like kind of what maybe you would want to do first, kind of through the last step. But of course, like anything, you can adjust these as needed. And I thought of things after the fact, so I'll try and kind of plug those in as we go along here. So tip number one is do some research. And I started with books. I asked some friends. I did a lot of YouTube research. Just get information from wherever you can that's going to help you decide my tip number two, which is decide what kind of garden do you want to grow. Do you want an herb garden? Do you want a flower garden, a vegetable garden? What does that look like for you? Now, my suggestion here is to start small. And I say that because I started small. Again, from my videos, you guys can see it's small. It's not perfect. There are a lot of things we still need to do with it. The area isn't perfected, but it is what it is, right? You have to start somewhere. So I just started. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So yeah, tip number two, just kind of figure out what do you want, or maybe you want a little bit of a mixture of both, which is really kind of what I have, because you kind of have to have some flowers in order to get the pollinators in to then pollinate your plants. That's a whole nother thing, but kind of a little bonus extra tip there. Moving on to tip number three, you need to make some sort of plan or kind of have a layout in your mind or even on paper. I did a little bit of both of what your garden space is going to look like. Now, you need to keep in mind how much sunlight does that specific area get based on what you're planting. Do you need an area that's more sunny? Do you need an area that has more shade? Do you need morning shade? Do you need afternoon shade? All of those things you want to take into consideration before you put anything on the ground or in the ground, because that makes a huge difference. Also, you want to think about water. When I originally had put my beds in, we did not have water near that area, and so my husband and I had to get water from our well over to that area. That made a big difference because there for like a week or so I was carrying like the little water canisters, like a watering can, and that was not fun. So take into consideration the sun, how easy water is to get over to your area, or if you can get water over there. And also think about your soil and your drainage as well. You don't want to plant in an area that just stays soaking wet, somewhere near a drain or something like that. So kind of some things to take into consideration when you're kind of planning your layout. One other thing, back to tip number 3 before I move on, also consider what you're planting in. So are you going to do raised beds? Are you just going to start with maybe a handful of containers? Are you going to do in ground? What does that look like? And then how, make a plan for that. Do you want to do a little bit of both or things like that? Now, moving on to tip number 4 is think about the wildlife in your area and how that's going to affect your garden. For us, we have everything. All the things. Well, I won't say all the things because several of you are from, several different places throughout the country. And so obviously you guys have different wildlife than we do, but we've got deer, rabbits, possums, armadillos, and squirrels. And then obviously we have birds and things too. So those are really our main ones here where we live. And I did not take those into consideration, which is why I'm giving you the tip, because if you guys noticed, we have no fencing. And so far, so good. Here's another little bonus tip. So we got Irish Spring soap, like, the little bars of soap. And we actually put one in an old like tiki torch that we had that we never used. We just obviously took the middle can out and just stuck the bar of soap in there and put it on one side of the garden. And then kind of in the front of the garden, we hung up an old shepherd's hook that we had gotten from the Dollar Tree. And on that, we put a sock that had another bar of Irish Spring soap in it. So far, that seems to be working. So that's an option for you. Right now, our biggest concern is our chickens. So like I said, we didn't think about that prior to, so I'm giving you the tip. Think about those things prior to. If you can, try and plan for some sort of fencing or put up some sort of fencing before you really get your garden going. Also, think about weeds and grass. Again, if you watched those, which of course you watched those. If you've made it this far, you watched the beginning, but you guys saw I had like some parts had weed cloth and then other parts didn't, and the grass is still growing through the weed cloth. Yeah, another thing that I didn't think about before getting the beds down was making sure, that we took care of the weeds and the grass in the area. So something, again, to think about, you can put down some sort of weed cloth like we have, and then put rocks down. You can mulch. There are a lot of different options. We are going to do rock, but before we do rock, we have to do a barrier around to hold the rock. But then before we do the barrier, we have to do the fence. So it's a whole thing. That's why I'm saying plan it now, because it's not as fun on the back end. Although if you don't have the money or the resources to do it up front, it's just something to be mindful of. Obviously, we have done fine this far, but if you can, try and get that done before. Moving on to tip number 5, order your seeds or get your plants, however you want to do that. I honestly have done a mixture of both. Some things I will plant from seed, and some things I will get plant starts. It really just kind of depends. Out there now, I have some collards that I got from one of our local hardware stores. It's not really collard season, but I didn't have anything to go in that spot, and I thought maybe we'd just try it. It wasn't gonna hurt. They were super cheap, probably because they're not really collard season, but it's fine. I also got tomatoes that were already started. I had planned on starting tomatoes from seed, but then once I started thinking spring garden, I realized that I was way too late to start my tomato seeds. So that was a whole thing. But I found them. They are doing extremely well so far. So either one of those are options. A couple of places, obviously you have your local nursery. If there is any way that you can support your local small businesses, I always recommend going there first. And they also will know what grows well in your area, whether it be fruits, vegetables, flowers, depending on what you're doing and what you're looking for. The people at your local nursery are probably going to be the most knowledgeable because they grow plants in your area. And so I highly suggest starting there. Sometimes their prices are a little bit higher, but you're supporting a local business. And to me, that is important. And I'd rather spend a couple more dollars at a family store or a locally owned store to support kind of my community. But I do also order seeds from True Leaf Market. I've had good results with their seeds, and I also have gotten seeds from Azure Standard. Now, Azure does offer plant starts as well. I have not ordered any from them before, so I can't speak to their quality or anything. But if it is anything like any of the other Azure products that we get, I am quite sure they will do well for you. So those are some options as far as where you can go, or at least a place to start to look for flowers, seeds, all the things. Okay, 2 tips left. Tip number 6, just start. Just start. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention, there is a website. This probably needs to go like tip 1 or 2 maybe. Probably tip 1 when you're researching. There is a website called garden.org. And you can go to that website, put in your zip code, and it will give you the plant start dates for your area. Whether you're doing direct sow or transplanting, it will give you lots of good information there. It will also tell you what's a good spring crop and a fall crop. It's a good place to start. And so that's one that you may want to jot down and check out. Kind of, like I said, when you're doing that kind of research stage. But back to tip number 6, right? 6, just start. You have to start somewhere. The best way to learn is to just do it. And that is where I am right now, which is why I am sharing at least a couple of the things that I have learned so far, because I planted literally just in like, I don't even know, 4 or 5 containers for the fall. I planted some things and I had no idea about anything. And it was one of the best things that I ever did, because I learned a lot through that, and it was very small. It was very manageable for me, and I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. And so now we're into the spring. I have 2 raised beds now, and now I've added some flowers in. So I've kind of upgraded a little bit, actually quite a bit really, but it still feels manageable. Sometimes you gotta do it, and there's no better time to start. And tip number 7 is to have fun and enjoy the process. There is no one that starts anything at any point and they know everything all the time. And so I feel like gardening is one of those things. And I feel like even experienced gardeners, sometimes they'll get into situations where it's like, oh, I don't know what this is, or why is this plant doing this thing? It's never done that before. And so have fun. It is a process. Try to enjoy it. One of the best things I ever did for myself was plant a garden. It gives me some quiet time alone outside for 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. It gets, I get going in the morning. It gives me something productive to do with my hands. I find a lot of peace there. And it's been really, really great. I've learned a lot, but my daughter has learned a lot too. She had a friend over not too long ago, and she was doing gardening lessons outside. So she was showing her friend what is a female flower, what's a male flower, you know, the female flower produces the fruit, all the things. There's so many things she's learned. So just start, get your kids involved if it's something that they are going to enjoy or something you think they could potentially enjoy. And yeah, I hope that helps you guys. If you have any tips, leave those in the comments below, of course. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.